Hi, welcome to Dave Thurston Music. Today I'm going to be doing a lesson going through the caged shapes, C-A-G-E-D, and how we can use those shapes to play arpeggios with big interval jumps from chord to chord without having to change position. But before we do, please go ahead and give me a like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on more videos as I put them out. Thanks. So if you're not familiar with the caged system, this is probably not the video for you. I will eventually do an introduction to the caged system, but I haven't yet, and there are a bunch out there. This is a bit more advanced, and it's going to be using the caged shapes to go through a cycle of fifths or cycle fourths, doing 5/1 resolutions through all the shapes, and it's just going to cycle us up the fretboard. It's a really good exercise. We're going to be using all dominant 7 shapes for a couple reasons. One, because the dominant 7 is going to want to pull in that 5-to-1 relationship really strong. Also, with the 4 notes per chord, it's going to give us a nice, if we're doing 8th notes or 16th notes, it's going to give us a nice even pattern, so we can go 4 beats up, 4 beats down, switch chord, 4 beats up, 4 beats down, switch chord. So we're going to have a nice consistent rhythmic pattern going there. The other reason is because the dominant 7 is only a half step away from a minor 7 and a half step away from a major 7. So, if you're soloing in real life, in any key, you're not going to be doing dominant 7ths all the time. You're going to want to be able to adapt them to majors and minors, and it's an easy adaptation to make from a dominant 7. Okay, without further ado, we're going to start. I like to start it with the E shape. I know it's not the first shape in the caged system, but we're going to start with an E shape, and we're going to make it a dominant 7. And you'll see that that's going to want to resolve to an A shape, but we're going to make that a dominant 7. And then that's going to want to resolve to a D shape, but we're going to make that a dominant 7. And it's going to resolve to a G7 or G shape, which is going to be dominant 7. And that's going to want to resolve to a C shape, but we're going to make it a dominant 7. It's going to resolve back to an E shape. But now, you probably noticed we're already fret up. So there you go. That's how the exercise works. It's actually not a bad exercise for chords too, but we're just going to be using it with arpeggios for now. And I recommend trying it with both alternate picking and sweep picking. Start probably with the alternate, really lock in that rhythm. And as you start building speed, and if you do sweep picking, it's worth trying to add that into. So, we've got our E shape. I'm starting on an A. The one thing we're going to need to add in is that 3 right there. So otherwise everything is already here in our hand. We just got to add a major 3. So we got 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, and then we just repeat it. And as you see, if I break it down by rhythm, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's going to resolve, then just up a half step to our A shape. And again, we're going to add in a 3 there. So now to get the full 2 measures, I had to come down to a flat 7 there. So we got 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now this next one's probably one of the trickiest ones, because when we think of the D shape, we just think of those first 4 strings usually. We don't really think about what's going on below there. But in that same position, there's our 1, we got a flat 7 here, a 5, and a 3. So, coming out of the A shape, we're just going to go down a half step to the 3. And there's 2 ways you could do this. We'll start with just the logical way where you're just going to go up You're not going to skip any notes. We're going to go 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 3, 1, 7, 5, 3, 1, flat 7, 5. So that rhythm gives us 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then that's perfectly reasonable, because then that's going to resolve down to the G shape. So what I often find myself doing, especially if I'm working for speed, is I don't like starting this on the 1, and it's just a bit cumbersome having to do both of those pinky movements. Just a little tiring. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll skip the 7, or at least I skip it on the way up. That lets me get all the way down to the 3, so I can resolve up a half step to the G shape. Which I like the sound of a little bit more. Plus rhythmically it gives me 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then I'm hitting the 1 on beat 1. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it's a little more aesthetically pleasing to me, although it is the only one that does, if I do it that way, it's the only chord in this that doesn't follow the note to note to note pattern. It's the only one that skips a note. So doing that D shape, where we skipped the flat 7 on the way up, lets us resolve up a half step to the G shape. So again, we got 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 7, 5, 3, 1, 7, 5, 3, and then that's going to resolve up a half step to the C. 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, 3, 1, 7, 5, 3, 1, 7, 5, 3. So again, that's a little weird one. You know, we don't often think about those lower notes in a C shape. A lot of times we say, well, there's the root, and maybe you think of the 5, but it's not often that we think about the 3 there. But that's going to give us another half step resolve right up to back to our E shape. And so on. So if you start doing that and it gets really easy and you're getting nice and fast and you're not having to think too much about it, one way to challenge yourself is to go up one chord and down the next chord. It's going to be a faster turnaround. You're going to have to think about what notes you're choosing a little more carefully. You're going to have to keep track of the chords a little more. So an example would be up an E shape, down an A shape, up a D, down a G, up a C, down an E, up an A, down a D, and so on. It'll work you through the exercise quite a bit faster. Really great practice, if you got like iReal Pro or some other some other kind of practice backing track, if you see any that just has dominant sevens and the circle of fifths, boom, here you go. Easy way to start arpeggiating over that is just taking these caged shapes. Takes a lot of the, I mean, not that you, takes some of the thinking out of it. But it's also highly adaptable, because if you got your E shape, dominant 7, and you want to make it a minor 7, all we got to do is just change that third and this third. So if we want to make it major, so dominant again. If we want to make it a major 7, we just got to change the 7. That really just opens up a whole world of opportunities. It's so easy to get stuck just, going linearly up the neck, down the neck, using one or two shapes. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of opportunity to break out of that, start making bigger chord jumps or finding them without having to struggle so much. Anyway, I hope you find this helpful. I love the CAGED system. I was never taught using the CAGED system. It's something I just found after, maybe 12 or 15 years of playing. I kind of came across it. I don't know how I'd never heard of it, but I find it super helpful. It's kind of changed how I look at the relationships between shapes, between chords. I think a lot more intervallically now than I did, when I was just memorizing scale shapes. And it's just opened up a new way of thinking about stuff for me. So experiment with this. I bet you'll find a lot of different applications. Bear in mind, you don't have to play the entire all 6 strings every time for the shape to count. It's good for exercises like this because you start associating all 6 strings. You have a place on every string for each chord, but you only have to play 3 notes for it to be a chord. So you can like, that's all E shape. Doesn't matter if you're playing the whole thing or not. So if you're trying to play over changes, just having that framework, knowing that you don't have to play the whole thing, you've got a few notes in each position or in each shape, is super helpful. So yeah, I just encourage you to experiment, make it your own. Have a good one. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks.